Welcome. This is your Need to Know. This is an episode recap, so there will be spoilers, sweetie. Music by Sisters AI Rhythmic. Check them out on YouTube.
This is your Need to Know.
Spoilers, sweetie.
All right, deep divers, are you ready to go back into the sands of Dune?
Always ready.
All right, awesome. So today we are looking at Dune, Prophecy, Episode 3, Sisterhood Above All. And we got a ton of great sources from you guys. This episode aired December 1st, and it really focuses in on Valia and Tula Harkonnen and their backstory and how they shaped the Bene Gesserit.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it is. And we've got a lot to unpack. We want to answer some big questions, like why are fans comparing the show to Game of Thrones and Bridgerton?
Right.
Is this a flashback episode? And if so, did it work?
Yeah. What's
this controversy over the Orange Catholic Bible and thinking machines? And most importantly, who is really behind the show's prophecy?
Yeah.
Lots to talk about. So to help us unpack all of this, I have with me, as always, our amazing expert. You always know how to connect the dots and give us mind-blowing Duneverse insights. So let's jump right in. This episode really dives deep into the Harkonnen family, giving us this glimpse into their past, long before they were calling the shots on Arrakis. What do you think about this focus on the Harkonnens?
I think it's a really interesting choice. You know, we get so much of the Ep3 in the original Dune and a lot of the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really fun that we get to see the Harkonnens.
Right.
And how they became who they are.
Yeah.
You know, before they were the big bad.
Yeah, totally. It humanizes them in a way.
Yes.
But also shows how those seeds of power and ambition were always there. And speaking of humanizing, did you catch Mark Addy, a.k.a. King Robert Baratheon from Game of Thrones, playing Valia's uncle?
Of course.
I mean, talk about a casting choice.
Yeah.
What did you think of him in that role?
I mean, I think it's really funny just visually to see him, you know,
right,
as this kind of jolly, uncle figure.
Right.
When we're so used to him as this kind of powerful, blustering king.
Exactly. He's like, where's the boar hunt?
Exactly.
But it also makes you think about the comparisons people are drawing between Dune, Prophecy, and Game of Thrones. I mean, do you see those parallels?
I do. I mean, Game of Thrones is all about these power dynamics within families, and we're definitely seeing that with the Harkonnens here.
Totally. Like all those rivalries and betrayals, it's giving me serious Game of Thrones vibes. What do you think, deep divers? Do you see the similarities? Let us know in the comments. But back to the Harkonnens. It's clear that Valia is the one calling the shots, even at a young age. Her ambition is just palpable.
Yeah, you can tell that she is, she's going places.
Yeah.
She's a mover and shaker, even as a young woman.
Oh, absolutely. And she's not afraid to manipulate those around her to get what she wants. I mean, remember how she plays on her brother's insecurities?
Oh, yeah.
It's chilling.
Ruthless.
And it contrasts so sharply with Tula, who seems to have these moments of compassion, even hesitation.
Yeah, she's definitely more conflicted.
Yes. Like with the young Atreides boy.
Well,
she spares him, which seems like an act of mercy at the time. But knowing Dune, there's always a deeper game at play, right?
always.
I mean, this boy could very well be an ancestor of key characters from the original Dune books, adding a whole other layer to this already tangled story.
It's true, and it makes you think about the nature of prophecy.
Yeah.
You know, is anything truly random?
Right.
Or is everything connected in some way?
Deep stuff, man. And that brings us to the big prophecy itself, the one born twice, once in blood, once in spice enigma that's been driving the show. Do you think this episode shifts our focus away from Desmond Hart?
I do. I think, we were led to believe that Desmond was the one.
Right.
But now with Tula trying to revive Leela using that forbidden technology,
oh, yeah,
it makes you wonder if Leela could be the twice-born figure everyone's been searching for.
It's like the showrunners are saying, think outside the box, deep divers. I love it. But this forbidden technology raises a whole other set of questions. The episode quotes the Orange Catholic Bible, the central religious text of the Dune universe.
Right.
The line is, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind."
Mm.
And yet, here we see the Bene Gesserit, the group preaching this doctrine, using that exact technology for their breeding program. Talk about hypocrisy.
Oh, it's blatant.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that tension between religion and technology.
Which is so relevant, even in our own world, right?
Absolutely.
It makes you think about the ethical implications of every technological advancement. But let's get back to those Harkonnen sisters. Their relationship is like a powder keg, especially with the potential return of Leela.
Yeah, things are definitely about to get messy.
Messy is an understatement.
Yeah.
Tula is clearly struggling with her actions, that brutal murder she committed for Valya. The guilt is eating away at her.
You can see it in her eyes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think this will drive a wedge between them? Could Tula turn against the Bene Gesserit?
I think it's definitely possible. She's already questioning Valya's methods.
Yeah.
And if she finds out about Leela,
Oh.
who knows what she'll do.
Oh. And let's not forget about that mysterious Harkonnen man who calls Valya Aunt.
Right.
Some fans are even speculating that he could be Tula's son.
Oh, wow.
It's like a family drama set in a sci-fi epic.
It is. It's got all the elements.
What stood out to you about their relationship in this episode?
You know, I think it's interesting how their personalities are so different.
Mm-hmm.
Valya is ruthless and calculating, while Tula is more compassionate. And I think that kind of reflects the broader conflict between the Harkonnens and the Atreides.
Oh, that's a great point. It's like they embody those opposing forces. Now, before we get too deep into the Harkonnen-Atreides rivalry, I have to point this out. Did you notice how their lifestyles are portrayed in this episode? The contrast was really striking to me.
Oh, yeah, totally different worlds. It's like they're living in completely different centuries almost.
I know. It's crazy to think this is all happening just decades after the Butlerian Jihad.
Right.
Which, for anyone who needs a refresher, was this huge war against thinking machines.
Yeah, basically humanity got a little too reliant on AI,
Right.
and it all backfired. Big time.
Totally. And that's why in the Dune universe, they're so careful about technology. Like the whole idea of creating machines that think like humans, it's a huge no-no.
Because they saw where that led.
Yeah, straight to a planet-wide rebellion.
Exactly.
So you have the Atreides in this episode with their, ritualistic bull hunt.
Right.
It feels almost medieval in a way. Like
Yeah.
they're clinging to these old traditions.
Like it's a way of rejecting that over-reliance on technology that caused the jihad in the first place.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to reclaim their humanity or something.
I can see that. And then you have the Harkonnens, who even way back then are all about, using whatever they can get their hands on to gain power.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the Butlerian Jihad hasn't put a dent in their ambition at all.
Oh, for sure. The whale fur industry, that's their ticket to the top. They see that.
Yeah, it's a much more, practical, in-your-face kind of power compared to the Atreides, I guess.
Yeah. Definitely. It's not symbolic at all. It's all about money and influence.
Exactly. And it's young Valya who's the brains behind it all, which is kind of
Rhaegar.
scary.
She's a mastermind, even before the spice agony.
It makes you wonder, right? Is she just born power hungry? Or is it because of how she was raised?
That's the age-old question, isn't it? Nature versus nurture.
Yeah, but it's clear her family's legacy. I mean, the Harkonnens have always been pretty ruthless.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But she seems to take it up a notch.
Definitely.
Her ambition isn't just about bringing back the family name or anything. It's like she wants to control everything and everyone.
She wants to shape the universe,
Yeah.
right? To her will.
Yeah.
That's pretty ambitious.
It really makes you think about the Bene Gesserit, too, right? Are they really trying to make humanity better, like they claim? Or are they just as power-hungry as the Harkonnens?
Especially with that whole hypocrisy thing, using the forbidden tech while preaching against it doesn't really inspire confidence, does it?
It makes you question their motives, that's for sure. And speaking of questioning motives, let's talk about that episode title, Sisterhood Above All. What do you think it means?
I mean, is it really about putting the sisterhood before everything else? Or is there something more to it?
Maybe it's the bond between women, even when they have different goals or they're struggling with their own, moral issues.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And you see that complexity in Valya and Tula's relationship. I mean, on the surface, they're so different. Tula has feelings for Ori.
Yeah, and that forbidden romance, oh my gosh.
It's heartbreaking. The way she poisons him and his family, but then spares the little boy.
It's brutal. I mean, what do you make of that decision?
It's like she's still clinging to some shred of humanity, even while she's carrying out this horrible act for Valya and the Harkonnens.
Yeah. And, who knows? Maybe that spared boy is going to be important later on. Maybe he's even part of the prophecy somehow.
Be a twist.
Prophecies in Dune. Never straightforward.
Right. Never. And with Leela potentially coming back, I mean, Tula's actions could have repercussions no one saw coming.
Right. Like, what if bringing Leela back throws everything off balance?
This episode really feels like things are changing.
Yeah.
You know, the power is shifting.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder about Tula's future. Is she going to stay loyal to Volya and the Bene Gesserit? Or is all this guilt and doubt going to push her in a different direction? It's a tough spot she's in, right? Like, is she going to go full Harkonnen? Or is she going to try and break free? And it's not just about Tula, right? Like, Leela coming back from the dead, that's huge.
It really is. It feels like, you know, more than just a plot twist. It's like it's getting at something deeper about the whole show.
Yeah, like what?
Like, about how far people will go to control life and death, about how technology and religion, you know, they keep bumping up against each other. And that question we've been talking about, can anyone really escape their past?
Mm-hmm. And if she does come back, I mean, will she even be the same Leela?
Right. That's a good question. I mean, the spice, it changes people. We know that.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, zooming out a bit, what does all this tell us about the Bene Gesserit? What's their role in all of this?
Well, they definitely think they know what's best for humanity.
Right.
You know, they have this whole plan. But their methods, they're not exactly ethical.
That's putting it mildly.
Working in the shadows, manipulating people.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you wonder if they're really any better than the Harkonnens in some ways.
You know, I was thinking about those comparisons to Game of Thrones and Bridgerton.
Yeah.
At first, I didn't really see it, but now, like, the more we talk about it, the more I see the connections.
Oh, absolutely.
All three shows, it's all about power struggles.
Yep.
Family secrets, and, you know, people trying to figure out what's right and wrong in a world where the rules are always changing.
And let's not forget the forbidden romance.
Oh, right. Tula and Ori. That's straight out of, you know, those classic stories.
Yeah. Star-crossed lovers. But in this case, it's not just about love, right? It's about the Harkonnens and the Atreides.
Yeah.
And how their choices affect the whole universe.
Exactly. Well, deep divers, we're getting close to the end of the season. And things are getting really intense. The Bene Gesserits are making their moves. Desmond Hart is still a mystery. And the prophecy, well, we still don't know who the one born twice really is. But here's something to think about. If Tula is starting to doubt Volya and the Bene Gesserit, could she end up helping the people who are fighting against them?
Now, that would be an interesting twist.
Right. It could change everything.
It really could.
I can't wait to see what happens. So any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Just keep those theories coming. The Dune universe is full of possibilities. So, yeah, keep digging into those sources. Keep an open mind and keep asking questions.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll be back to explore another corner of the Duneverse. Till then, may your spice flow freely.
This is what you need to know. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to know.
All right, strap in, everyone, because we're going deep into Dune territory with this deep dive. Specifically, we're looking at fan reactions to Episode 3 of Dune, Prophecy, Sisterhood Above All.
Lots to unpack.
Yeah, you guys sent us a ton of online discussions, especially from Reddit, and
Things got a little heated.
just a little, so much debate about the pacing, the flashbacks, you know, the whole, how does this connect to the larger Dune world?
And that's what we're here for.
Exactly. But before we get into all of that,
Right.
let's do a quick recap for anyone who needs a refresher. So, Sisterhood Above All takes us way back
Way back.
to the early days of Tula and Volya Harkonnen.
Before they were the big players we know.
Right. Like, we're talking young women grappling with their legacies.
And some pretty intense family drama, too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Tula, she's trying to escape the Harkonnen name, their whole ruthlessness thing.
Which, let's be real, is a lot to escape.
Right. Especially with that whole poisoned hunting trip incident.
Yeah. Okay, we got to talk about that scene.
The one where young Tula helps poison the Atreides family.
Huge moment, not just for the plot, but what it tells us about Tula. We see that dark side of the Harkonnen legacy she wants to run from.
And it really sets up that complicated relationship with Volya.
Who seems a lot more comfortable with the whole power play thing.
Yeah, so While Tula's dealing with all that, Valya's off on her own path.
Climbing the ranks of the Bene Gesserit.
And then, bam, the hidden vault reveal.
Another curveball, right?
Total game changer.
Valya stumbles upon this secret vault filled with, wait for it, thinking machines.
Big no-no in the Dune universe.
Huge, especially because the Bene Gesserit are supposed to be anti-technology after the whole Butlerian Jihad thing.
I think we should probably explain that a bit for those who aren't as familiar.
Definitely, yeah. So the Butlerian Jihad, it's this galaxy-wide crusade against thinking machines and AI.
Humanity basically said, nope, we're in charge. And that led to the very carefully controlled tech society we see in Dune. So back to that vault. I mean, this discovery, it really complicates things, right? It shows that the Bene Gesserit aren't as pure as they claim to be.
Oh, absolutely. They're playing with fire, using forbidden tech for their own goals.
Which is why a lot of fans are calling them out, right?
Yeah.
On the hypocrisy.
Yeah, like, wait, you manipulate everyone through religion and social control, but you're using forbidden tech.
The double standard is not lost on people.
And honestly, I think it makes the story better. Adds a layer of moral ambiguity to the Bene Gesserit.
Makes them more human, more flawed.
Exactly. Now they're not these all-knowing good guys. They have their own agendas, secrets.
In a willingness to bend the rules when it suits them.
It's not just a monolithic force anymore. It's individuals wrestling with their own ambitions.
Within a system that might be way more corrupt than anyone realizes.
Now that's interesting.
Right. So we have this shocking reveal about the Bene Gesserit, the brutal Harkonnen Atreides backstory.
Cool.
It's heavy stuff. But amidst all of this, was there anything fans were excited about?
Oh, definitely. A lot of praise for the episode's emotional depth, particularly for Valya and Tula's relationship. We're seeing them as young women, trying to find their place, not just future power players.
People are loving the performances, especially Jessica Barden as young Valya.
So good, right? That intensity, that charisma.
It makes you think differently about Emily Watson as older Valya, almost.
Like, what happened in those years to change her so much?
What events, choices shaped that fiery young woman into the more reserved leader we see later on?
That's what makes you invested in the story, that character development.
We're getting this behind-the-scenes look at these powerful figures, understanding their motives, why they do what they do.
And that's crucial for a prequel, I think.
You can't just rely on the audience's existing knowledge. You have to show them something new, something that makes them rethink.
Makes them say, huh, I never thought about it that way.
Okay, so we've got character development, the Bene Gesserit reveal, but there's also been a lot of talk about world building.
Oh, yeah. How this episode expands the Dune universe.
So what are fans saying? What did they like?
Lots of appreciation for the glimpses into different planets and cultures. We see Seleucia Secundus, the Harkonnen homeworld, before it became, well, what it became. Lanky Vale, the Bene Gesserit school.
And even those subtle hints about the impact of the Butlerian Jihad on everyday life.
Right, like that mention of the Orange Catholic Bible.
The dominant religion in the Dune universe, shaped by the fear of technology.
Those little details, they enrich the world building, show how deeply intertwined everything is.
So would you say, even with the risks this episode takes, all the debate, it ultimately makes the story better?
I think so. It's adding layers of complexity, nuance to the characters, the world.
It's challenging expectations.
Making us question what we thought we knew.
And drawing us deeper into this universe.
All good things in my book.
All right, so that's a pretty compelling argument for how sisterhood above all shakes things up for the better.
But of course, not everyone agrees.
No, definitely not. There's been some pretty strong criticism, particularly about the pacing and all those flashbacks.
Oh yeah, we need to dive into that.
Absolutely. Get ready, folks, because things are about to get even more interesting as we explore the dark side of the fan reaction.
Okay, let's talk criticisms, because some fans did not hold back.
No, they did not.
That pacing, especially those long flashback sequences.
A lot of people felt like the episode just, I don't know, slammed on the brakes.
It just kind of interrupt the flow, yeah.
Like we were getting into the present-day story, things were getting good, and then boom, decades into the past.
I get it. From a storytelling perspective, that can be risky. Too many flashbacks, if they're not done well, they can really kill the tension you've built up.
So even though these flashbacks give us important information about Valya and Tula,
Right. Crucial backstory.
they could have been handled differently, you're saying?
Maybe. I mean, think about it. Those first 2 episodes were introduced to this complex world, the Bene Gesserit, the Harkonnens, all that.
We're hooked. We want to know what happens next.
Exactly. And then suddenly it's like, hold on, time for a history lesson.
And while I'm all for learning more about these characters,
Oh, me too.
I can see how that jump back in time could be jarring.
Especially for those who aren't as familiar with the Dune universe. They might be thinking, wait, Who are these people? Why should I care about 50 years ago?
It's a tough balance, providing context without losing the audience.
But here's the thing. Some fans actually think those flashbacks, even if they disrupted the momentum, made the story stronger.
Okay, how so? I'm genuinely curious.
They're arguing that by understanding Valia and Tula's early years, we're more invested in what they're doing now, their motivations, you know?
Like you see those formative experiences and suddenly their actions make more sense.
Exactly. The trauma, the betrayals, the moral compromises, it all adds up.
It connects their past to their present.
And it makes them more than just typical villains.
More depth, more nuance.
It's a long game, for sure, but if it pays off,
Could be really rewarding.
that's the hope.
Okay, I see their point. A different way of looking at it. But moving on, we got to address the Game of Thrones comparisons.
Ah, yes. The inevitable comparison.
It seems like any show with powerful families, intrigue, fancy costumes, it's getting compared.
Dune. Prophecy definitely has some of those elements, yeah.
Especially that medieval look in the flashbacks.
Horses, chainmail.
It was a little weird, right? Because we know Dune has advanced tech, spaceships.
That disconnect bothered some people. It's like, why does the past look so primitive if this is a futuristic society?
It took me out of it a little, I have to admit.
Some fans are saying it feels like a stylistic borrowing, not a real world-building choice.
Trying to capitalize on Game of Thrones without committing to its own visual style.
Right, that it feels derivative.
But there are others who defend it, saying it reflects that post-Balerian jihad mindset.
That rejection of technology, embracing a simpler past.
So it's not just aesthetics, it's about showing the cultural impact of that event.
Exactly, the fear of technology, how it shapes their society, even fashion.
And if we're thinking big picture, it could be a hint at that cyclical nature of history.
Ooh, I like that.
The Bene Gesserits are all about the long game, right? So maybe this is foreshadowing. Humanity might have rejected technology now, but that could change.
That cycle could swing back.
Exactly. This episode, it really makes you think.
It's not just about the action, it's about the deeper themes, the questions about humanity and technology.
All right, so you've made a good case for how the flashbacks and visuals add to the story. But we got to talk about the missing truth-sayer in the room.
Desmond Hart, you mean?
Yeah. A lot of fans felt his absence in this episode. He was such a presence in the first two.
And then poof, gone.
I think the showrunners are doing that on purpose, building anticipation.
Creating mystery around his character.
Like they're saying, you want more Desmond Hart? You'll have to wait.
Which can be frustrating, I know.
But think about it, narratively speaking. His absence lets the story focus on Valia and Tula, their backstories.
They get more space to develop without being overshadowed.
And when he does come back, those interactions will be even more powerful.
Because we've spent this time understanding Valia and Tula, their complexities.
We're set up for a major confrontation, a clash of ideologies.
That's what keeps us hooked, right? The anticipation.
Okay, you've given me a new perspective on that. But what about the fans who are already theorizing about Desmond Hart's connection to the bigger picture? The whole born twice prophecy.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Lots of debate about who it actually refers to.
Some think it's Desmond Hart, others say it's Leela, the girl Tula put in the spice coma.
I think the showrunners are loving this, playing with our expectations.
Dropping hints, but no answers.
Exactly. Keeps us guessing.
Okay, let's break it down. First, Desmond Hart. What makes people think he's the born twice figure?
Well, his abilities, for one. The prescience, the manipulation, the cryptic pronouncements.
It's more than just being a truthsayer, right?
Right. Some think he might even be a Kwisatz Haderach.
Whoa, hold on. Like Paul Atreides level. But aren't the Bene Gesserit supposed to be controlling that whole breeding program?
That's the mystery. Did they accidentally create him? Or is he something else entirely, something beyond their control?
He's like a wild card in their game.
Makes him even more dangerous, unpredictable.
Okay, so that's Desmond Hart. What about Leela? How does she fit into this prophecy?
Remember that key phrase? Born twice, once in blood, once in spice.
Yeah, it's pretty ominous.
Well, some fans think that's literally about Leela, Harkonnen bloodline, and then the spice exposure.
We know spice can have some crazy effects.
Maybe that coma triggered something in her, some latent ability, or even prescience.
Like a mini Paul Atreides.
It's possible, and it makes you wonder about Tula's motives. Is she protecting Leela, or is there something more going on?
Ooh, intrigue. So we have two potential born twice candidates, each with their own mysteries.
And that's what I love about Dune, prophecy. It's not just rehashing the old story, it's asking new questions, pushing us to rethink what we know.
Okay, so prophecies aside, we can't forget about the relationships, especially Tula and Valya.
Ah, yes. The Harkonnen sisters. Complicated, to say the least.
We see the love, the loyalty, but also that underlying tension.
That simmering resentment.
I think it comes from their different views on power, on how far they're willing to go.
Tula seems to be struggling with guilt, while Valya is more pragmatic, embracing that Harkonnen ruthlessness.
It's what makes their relationship so interesting to watch.
They're playing the same game, but by different rules.
And those rules are bound to clash eventually.
Which will be heartbreaking, but also fantastic drama.
You mentioned earlier about this episode challenging expectations. Can you talk about that a little more?
Sure. I think Sisterhood Above All really pushes us to rethink what a Dune story can be. It's not just about space battles and politics.
It's about the characters, their inner lives.
Exactly. The psychology, the emotions, the moral dilemmas.
It's saying, hey, there's more to this universe than sandworms and spice.
And I think that's a bold choice considering how popular the Dune franchise is. People have expectations.
It's like they're saying, we're not just rehashing the familiar. We're going deeper, exploring new territory.
And that sense of exploration, it's what makes this series so captivating.
It's not just a prequel. It's a re-examination of the whole Dune universe.
Peeling back the layers of history, showing how everything came to be.
And that's risky. Some people might not like it.
They might want something more straightforward, more familiar.
But for those of us who love a challenge, who want a story that makes us think, Sisterhood Above All really delivered.
It's like a gift wrapped in mystery and tied with fan theories.
And a little wink, like, we know you want answers, but trust us, the journey is just as important.
I love that. The journey is just as important.
I'm putting that on a mug.
Mm.
But speaking of journeys, we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. What's the key takeaway you hope listeners get from all of this?
You know, if we zoom out a little, I think this episode reminds us that even the most powerful institutions, organizations, they're still built by humans, with all our flaws and contradictions.
So it's not just about the Bene Gesserit, it's about any system of power.
Exactly. We need to question those systems, look beyond the surface, and see the choices, the compromises, the potential for corruption.
Because good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes.
And the pursuit of order can sometimes create chaos.
And that's something we can all relate to, even outside of the Dune universe.
Absolutely. It's a timeless message.
Well said. And with that thought-provoking note, we'll leave you to ponder the implications of all of this.
Remember, in the world of Dune, nothing is certain.
And that's what makes it so exciting. All right, so we're back. And ready to dive into episode 3 of Dune, Prophecy. This one's called Sisterhood Above All.
Yeah!
And oh my gosh, this episode is, I've been seeing a lot online.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there is.
From shocking reveals, time jumps, and just, I think all the online chatter that's going on about it, it's really,
A lot of twists and turns. Yeah.
it keeps you guessing, that's for sure. Sisterhood Above All really delves deep into, I think, the Bene Gesserit themselves, right?
Right.
We're looking at how their methods
Right
developed,
on.
how far they're willing to go to exert their control even 10,000 years before Paul Atreides.
Yeah, those time jumps
Yeah.
really threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
I mean, 1 minute we're watching Tula Harkonnen orchestrate this brutal massacre, and then
Very brutal scene.
it's like whiplash.
It is. And you think, wait, how did we get here?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think, again, strategically placed. It's not just for, dramatic effect, right? They're really trying to provide us with insights into how the Bene Gesserit came to be, how they originated. So, for example, the massacre that Tula participates in is like a very chilling example of, the Sisterhood's long-standing practice of manipulating bloodlines to achieve their political goals, which we see play out throughout the Dune saga.
Exactly. And it's like we're seeing those seeds being planted for these long game schemes that they're so well known for.
Right.
It's really fascinating to see.
But on top of that, right, you're
yeah.
also seeing the internal conflict that Tula's going through.
Yeah.
You know, you see her anguish. You know, she's clearly disturbed by what she's had to do, and it hints at, I think, you know, that struggle, that moral compass that she wrestles with later on.
Absolutely.
It adds complexity to her character.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting how they use the other memory sequence
Right.
to foreshadow, I think, her desire to help Lila,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in that scene, Tula's accessing memories of her ancestors. So she's experiencing, you know, their triumphs. She's experiencing their atrocities.
Right.
And it's almost as if she's being confronted, you know, with the potential for both good and evil
Yeah.
within herself and within the sisterhood.
It definitely adds a layer of complexity, I
Yeah.
think, to her character.
Yeah.
You know, she's more than just a ruthless Harkonnen. But then we
Well,
have her sister,
Yes, we do.
Valya, who seems to embody that classic Harkonnen ambition.
Yeah.
She's playing the game of power,
Yeah.
manipulating everyone around her
Right.
to achieve her goals. I mean, she goes as far as to create the
Oh.
voice technique.
Talk about a power move, right?
It is.
Yeah, and you know, I think that was such a pivotal moment. Not only does it show her ingenuity, but I think it really reveals this key aspect of the Bene Gesserit philosophy.
Yep.
They understand the power of language. They understand, you know, subtle persuasion and how to use it, you know, to their advantage. And, you know, it's a tool that we see them wield throughout, you know, the Dune timeline. And in Valya, I think we're seeing kind of the origins of that.
So it's more than just a,
More than a cool trick.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like we're witnessing,
You're witnessing a real turning point, I
Yeah.
think, in the Sisterhood's history.
okay.
And it raises a lot of questions about how far are they willing to go,
Yeah.
you know, to achieve their goals. Are they really these, you know, benevolent guides for humanity, or are they master manipulators with their own agenda? And I think, you know, that ambiguity is part of what makes them so compelling, both in the prequel series and in, you know, the wider Dune universe.
And speaking of agendas, we have Desmond Hart, this guy who can resist the voice, which makes him a total wild card.
He's a wild card.
And it feels like his presence is throwing a wrench
Yeah.
in the Bene Gesserit's plans, like they're encountering something they can't predict or control.
Exactly. I mean, he represents the limits of their control,
Yeah.
the possibility of chaos in a universe that they desperately want to order.
Right.
And remember, this is all taking place shortly after the Butlerian Jihad.
Right.
Right. That devastating war against thinking machines.
Yeah.
So, you know, humanity's still reeling from those consequences. The fear of anything disrupting, you know, their carefully rebuilt society
Right.
is palpable.
That's a really good point. The Butlerian Jihad
Yeah.
is such a huge part of Dune lore, and it explains a lot about the technology, or lack thereof, I guess, in this episode.
Right. So the Butlerian Jihad resulted in a severe backlash against technology, right? It's why the Harkonnens, the Atreides, appear to live in these kind of relatively low-tech societies. It was a deliberate choice, I think, by the creators to really ground this prequel series in that historical context.
Okay, so it's not just like,
Not just budget.
yeah, they're actually making a point
They're making a point.
about where things stand.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes more sense then.
Yeah.
But I do have a question about that.
Okay.
So if there's this deep-seated fear of technology,
Uh-huh.
how do we explain the Bene Gesserit using AI to administer the spice agony to Lila?
That's a great question.
It seems like a contradiction.
It does, and it really speaks to, I think, that hypocrisy that lies beneath this seemingly benevolent facade,
Yeah.
right? Remember, they view themselves
Right.
as above the rules, as architects of humanity's future. They might condemn technology publicly, but behind closed doors, they're
Yeah.
going to use it for their own purposes when it suits them.
So Lila's spice agony is more than just this, like, harrowing ritual.
Right.
It's a commentary on their methods.
Yeah.
It's a commentary, I think, on their moral flexibility,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
And it's really intriguing considering her lineage, right? You know, she's descended from both the Harkonnens and the Atreides,
Right.
you know, two families locked in a feud
Right.
that has really shaped, you know, the Dune universe for millennia.
And with all this talk about bloodlines and prophecies,
Yes.
it makes me wonder if Leela's uncertain fate
Yeah.
is tied to that prophecy about someone born twice.
Born twice in blood and spice.
Yes.
Right. It's
Yeah.
very compelling. And after all, you could say that the spice agony is a symbolic second birth. You know, it's a transformation
Yeah.
fueled by the spice and obviously the trauma that she endures.
And Tula defied the sisterhood to try to revive Leela
Right.
using that forbidden AI technology.
Right.
So what if that act of defiance
Yeah.
inadvertently sets in motion
Yeah.
the very prophecy that they're trying to control?
Right. They're so focused on manipulating events, on shaping the future according to their design, they fail to see those unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a theme, I think, that we see throughout
Yeah.
the Dune saga.
Right. It's playing out right in front of us.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So we have the Bene Gesserit playing their long game.
Right.
Leela's
Yeah.
fate
Yes.
hanging in the balance.
Mhm.
This prophecy looming over everything.
Yeah.
But then this episode throws another, just twist at us, which is Harold Harkonnen.
Harold Harkonnen enters the picture.
He calls Valia and Tula aunt, and the internet just,
The theories are flying.
oh my God.
Everyone's trying to figure out
Yeah.
where he fits in on this family tree, right?
Yeah,
It's a game changer, his arrival.
It is.
Yeah, the online speculation's running wild.
Yeah.
The most popular theory, and it's a juicy one, is that Harrow is the son of Tula and the Atreides man she was involved with.
Right. Or,
Yeah. Right. And remember, Tula was the one who orchestrated that massacre
right.
of his entire family, which haunts her to this day.
So the Baron Harkonnen, like one of the most iconic villains in Dune,
Yes.
could have
Freddie's blood.
Atreides' blood.
Yeah. What a twist.
Oh my gosh.
It speaks to how interconnected these families are, right? Their destinies are just intertwine
Right.
in ways they can't even comprehend. And the choices that they make in this episode will reverberate throughout, the Dune timeline.
Wow. Okay, I need a minute to process all this.
It's a lot.
This episode is just a whirlwind of revelation.
It is.
And I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's definitely more to explore. So in our next part of the deep dive, we're going to delve deeper into some of the moral dilemmas,
Okay.
the hidden agendas,
Yeah.
and, of course, the potential consequences of those choices
Yeah.
that we saw in Sisterhood above all. So buckle up,
Yeah.
because things are about to get even more interesting.
I'm ready.
It's incredible how this episode, Sisterhood above all, weaves together all these seemingly disparate threads. The Harkonnens' economic woes, the Bene Gesserit's manipulation, Butlerian Jihad's lingering impact, and it makes them so relevant not just to this episode but to the whole Dune saga.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing the origins of so many things that we just take for granted in the Dune universe. Like, remember that scene in the first episode?
Yes.
Where the Harkonnens are desperately trying to sell whale fur?
Yeah.
It seemed so random at the time.
Right.
But now knowing that Harold Harkonnen, the same Baron Harkonnen that was peddling that fur,
Right.
addresses Tula and Valia as aunt,
Right.
it just hits different.
It takes on a whole new meaning.
It does. It
Yeah.
really does. It's such a subtle detail, but it completely changes our understanding of the Harkonnens' rise to power.
Exactly.
They weren't always these wealthy, spice-controlling tyrants we know from the main storyline.
Right. They were scrabbling for influence, trying to claw their way back from the brink of ruin.
Yep.
And that desperation, I think that willingness to exploit any opportunity really foreshadows the ruthlessness that they'll display later on on Arrakis.
Yeah, and it adds another layer to the whole Harkonnen and Atreides feud.
Uh-huh.
It's not just this personal rivalry.
Right.
It's a clash between two families who are both vying for power
Yes.
in a universe that's still reeling from the Butlerian Jihad.
And speaking of the Jihad, I think it's worth exploring how that event continues to shape events in Sisterhood, above all.
Okay.
We see it in the distrust of technology, the reliance on, human computers instead of thinking machines,
Right.
even in the Bene Gesserit's own practices.
Yeah, you're right. Them using that forbidden AI to manage their breeding records.
Yes.
And to try and revive Leela.
It's a glaring contradiction.
It is.
It makes you question, their supposed rejection of technology.
Yeah, it really highlights the hypocrisy at the heart of the sisterhood.
Right.
They preach caution, they warn against the dangers of thinking machines,
But yet they're willing to utilize that very technology. Right.
for their own purposes.
It makes you wonder, are they really as benevolent
Right.
as they claim to be?
Are they just as power hungry
Yeah.
as the Harkonnens?
Yeah.
Just more subtle about it?
More subtle. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that question really lies at the heart of this episode.
Uh-huh.
It's something that viewers are going to continue to grapple with, I think, as this series unfolds.
Yeah, and it's not just the Bene Gesserit as an institution.
Right.
We see this internal conflict play out in Tula and Valya as well.
Absolutely.
Tula's like wrestling with her conscience, questioning the sisterhood's methods,
Right.
while Valya's embracing that ambition, that drive to control the future.
Their dynamic is so fascinating.
It is.
It's almost as if they represent two sides of the Bene Gesserit coin.
Okay.
Tula embodies, I think, the potential for empathy and compassion within the sisterhood,
Uh-huh.
while Valya embodies, the ruthlessness and the pragmatism that can come with wielding that kind of power.
And that final scene where Tula uses the AI to try and save Leela.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a huge turning point.
Huge turning point.
It's like she's drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm not going to be a pawn in your game anymore, Valya.
Yeah, it's a powerful moment. And it sets the stage for what could be an epic clash between those two sisters.
Right.
A clash that could have far-reaching consequences, not just for the Bene Gesserit, but for the entire Dune universe.
Oh, wow. Right?
Great.
This is all so fascinating.
It is.
But I have to admit, it's making my head spin a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There are so many layers to this episode.
Yeah.
So many connections to the wider Dune universe.
It's really expanding the lore in, I think, some really fascinating ways.
Yeah.
It's not just about retelling a familiar story.
Mm-hmm.
It's about deepening our understanding, I think, of the forces that shape that universe. The political machinations,
Right.
the ethical dilemmas,
Yeah.
the long shadow of the Butlerian jihad. It's all there.
It's all there, and it's all brought to life so beautifully through these incredible
Oh,
visuals.
visuals are stunning.
Especially those flashback sequences.
Oh, yeah.
The Atreides hunt.
Yes.
The Harkonnen family gathering.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just breathtaking.
The attention to detail is remarkable.
It is.
Everything from the costumes and the set design to the way they capture the different cultures and environments of this era in the Dune timeline.
Yeah.
It adds a level of immersion, I think, that really enhances the storytelling.
Yeah, and I have to give props to the actors, too.
Oh, yeah.
Both, the young ones and the older actors.
Yeah, they're all so talented.
They bring so much nuance and complexity to their roles.
Yeah, especially I think the actresses playing Tula and Valya,
Yes.
you can really see the seeds of their future selves.
Uh-huh.
The ambition, the ruthlessness, but also that vulnerability and the internal conflict. And that's what makes these characters so compelling.
Absolutely.
They're not just archetypes. They're fully realized individuals grappling with these complex choices
Yeah.
and facing the consequences of their actions.
This episode has been a roller coaster,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm so eager to see where the story goes from here.
Me too.
But before we dive into the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to touch on something that's been nagging at me.
Okay, what's that?
It's the Bene Gesserit's reliance on the Missionaria Protectiva.
Okay.
We know that they plant these myths and legends among the people of the Imperium to manipulate them.
Right.
But in Sisterhood, above all, we see them taking a much more active role.
Yeah, they're getting their hands dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
It's
not
like-
just whispering in the shadows.
Right.
They're orchestrating massacres,
Right.
manipulating bloodlines, and even defying their own rules to achieve their goals.
That it does raise some uncomfortable questions
It does.
about the Missionaria Protectiva
Uh-huh.
and their true motives.
It makes you wonder, is it truly about protecting humanity,
Right.
as they claim?
Or is it about controlling humanity?
Yeah, shaping it according to their vision.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, are they ultimately a force for good
All right.
or for ill?
That's a question that has haunted the Dune universe since its inception. And I
Yeah.
think Sisterhood, above all, doesn't give us any easy answers.
It doesn't.
Instead, it challenges us to confront, I think, the moral ambiguities of the Bene Gesserit,
Okay.
to question their methods, and to consider the potential consequences of their actions.
And those consequences are something we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Yes, we
Where
will.
we'll delve into the episode's ending
Mm-hmm.
and its implications for the future of Arrakis, the fate of humanity,
Stakes.
the legacy of the Bene Gesserit themselves.
It's all connected.
Stay tuned.
Oh.
All right, so let's get into that ending.
Oh, yeah.
Of Sisterhood above all.
Yeah.
Because, wow, that ending,
Yeah, a lot of cliffhangers.
so many questions. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah, we're left wondering about Leela.
Yeah.
The Harkonnen Atreides feud is obviously still simmering.
Yeah.
And the Bene Gesserit, their machinations are just spinning a web that's
Nice.
going to impact, generations to come. And then, of course,
And then on top of all that,
yeah,
Harold Harkonnen just,
talk about an entrance.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, he drops that ant bomb.
Nice,
and it's
nice.
like, wait, what? Suddenly we're questioning everything we thought we knew about, his lineage, where he fits in.
Right. And it's such a Dune thing to do,
It is.
to introduce a character who just kind of like disrupts everything.
Yeah, it throws a wrench in the works.
It does. And the implications of his arrival are huge.
Cute.
Especially if that theory about him being Tula's son.
Right, if that's true.
It's true. Yeah.
That adds a whole other layer to this Harkonnen-Atreides conflict.
It does. Imagine the Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah.
One of the, the villains of the Dune universe.
Yes.
Carrying the blood of his enemy.
Yeah, of the family he's destined to, clash with.
Yeah, it's almost poetic, isn't it?
It is.
And it speaks to that, cyclical nature of history that Frank Herbert explores throughout the Dune saga.
Right.
Like, the past is never really the past.
Right.
It echoes, it shapes the present, and it influences the future.
And it makes you wonder if this connection of Harrow's existence is what ultimately, triggers...
Right, the catalyst.
That war.
Yeah, the full-blown war
From the book.
that we know is coming. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got this time bomb ticking away.
Ticking away.
But we also have Leela just hanging in the balance.
Good.
After that spice agony.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are the chances she survives?
Oh, that's the big question, isn't it?
And if she does, what role could she play in all of this?
Right. And I think it's deliberately ambiguous.
Yeah.
They're keeping us guessing. But let's just, for a moment, imagine that Tula's attempt
To revive her, using that AI actually works. What happens then?
Well, I mean, first of all, it would be a huge slap in the face to the Bene Gesserit.
Oh, absolutely. They forbade the use of that technology. Tula just went rogue.
Yeah.
It's a direct challenge to their authority, to their methods.
Right.
And I think it could have ripple effects throughout the sisterhood. Do they punish Tula for her transgression?
Right.
Or do they try to control Lula, to mold her,
Right.
turn her into some kind of weapon that serves their purpose?
Because remember, her ancestry is unique.
It is.
She's a descendant of both.
She represents both sides of this.
Yeah.
This feud that defines, I think, this era of the Dune timeline.
It's possible that she could, bridge.
Right, exactly. Like a
Yeah.
bridge between these warring factions,
Yeah.
a symbol of unity in
Yeah.
a universe that's so full of conflict.
Yeah. Or she could become, a pawn
Oh, yeah.
in their games.
A pawn in their games.
Manipulated by both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, but what if Leela's survival and her very unique heritage
Yeah.
are the key to fulfilling that born twice in blood and spice prophecy?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you could interpret the spice agony as that second birth.
Yeah.
It's a transformation.
Yeah.
It unlocks, this hidden potential.
Yeah. What if she wakes up with powers
Imagine that.
that are just beyond?
Right, beyond human comprehension.
Oh my gosh.
It could tip the balance of power in the entire Dune universe.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
It's a lot to take in.
So we've got prophecies, we've got family feuds, the shadow of the Butlerian Jihad,
Yeah.
the Bene Gesserit are playing their long game.
It's Dune, right.
It is Dune, but it's so much. It's overwhelming, but it's exciting.
It's overwhelming, but in the best way possible.
Yeah. It is. It really is.
It keeps you coming back for more.
Yeah.
And I think it just speaks to, how much depth and complexity there is to this universe.
Right.
That even a prequel series like this can raise so many interesting questions. Keep us on the edge of our seats. You just never know what's going to happen next.
I can't wait to see what happens with Leela and Harrow and how this,
Yeah.
all ties into the Dune we know and love.
And how it connects to that larger timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Well, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What are your theories?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think Leela will survive? Head over to the comments.
Yeah, share your thoughts.
Send us in now.
Yeah, let's discuss.
And we will be back with another deep dive soon.
Yes, we will. There's a lot more Dune to explore.
Keep exploring.
This is your need to know.
I see a gold path, sandworm reborn. Ride the sand in search of life. Blue, in blue, the darkness comes through. Blue, in blue, the darkness comes through. Blue, in The dream is lost as it is found across the centuries of sand. Blue, in blue, the darkness comes through. Blue, in blue, the darkness comes through. Blue, in blue, I see a golden path, eternal life and eternal soul, present beyond all hope. Blue, in blue, the darkness comes through.